me show two perspectives.
Two perspectives, two perspectives. It's sort of a play between art from the quilting, from a base of quilting to a base of embroidery, hand embroidery. All of my work is done by hand. And this one is called Fairies in the Garden. And it was just, the fabric speaks to me. I paint and dye my own fabric. And each piece speaks to me ahead of time. This one, I just saw it as a early morning with a bit of a mist on the garden and fairies dancing around in it.
And there's more upstairs.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, this is a combination of some older pieces as well as new ones, this particular show. It started out with gold was the theme of a juried show I entered, and just sort of evolved from there. And this one I was doing when the Olympics were on in Sochi a year ago, and I was sitting watching the Olympics, and when I finished it, I thought, what am I going to call this? And I realized that the lines in it and the design in it represented many of the Olympic venues and elements of the Olympics. So there's ski jumps and moguls and figure skating. I hadn't realized that when I was stitching it. It was just very intuitive. And again, this one, it was the fabric sort of reminded me of more of a desert, and I call it Sahara Sunset. On here, there's a little green spot here, and I've enlarged it there to be a palm tree, sort of the oasis in the desert. And this one is a fun one that it started out, wasn't sure what it was going to be. I stitch intuitively, and the piece talks to me as I work with it. And this I saw is underwater, and there's some seaweed and things. And then it became schools out, so it's a school of fish all heading out into the ocean. And the green, this part here is dyed cheesecloth, but the rest of the green is all called kozo, and it's the inner bark of the mulberry tree that has been treated, and I've dyed that as well. This is called the Red Planet, and again, there's a lot of kozo. The red is kozo and a lot of gold. It was just a sort of a fun piece that the kozo talked to me, and I laid it down and started stitching with it, and so it was just one of those things that happened. This is another one that started out as something very different than what it ended up to be, and as I stitched, things changed and I couldn't see where I was going with it, and eventually this is what came out of it, and then I couldn't figure out a name for it. So it's called Wonderment. I'm still wondering what it's meant to be, but sort of looks like a pathway going, and up here to me it's sort of the planets. So stairway into, or pathway into the world, I guess. This is one of my newer pieces, and it's called Microbodies, and I was trying to make it look like I was looking through a magnifying glass at microbodies, and again, it was the fabric I had dyed and painted, and so with a lot of gold and metallic threads, it sort of came out to be what I call microbodies. This is called Listening for Aliens. This past winter I experimented a bit with different dyeing techniques and did some different things with my dyeing of fabric. And so I've played around with two different types of dyed fabric in this one. And again, I stitched, and when it was done, I thought, oh, it looks like aerials or satellites, so I called it Listening for Aliens, just sort of a fun piece.
And I noticed that you use beads.
Yes, I do. I use beads as well as the stitching, and I use a lot of metal threads. This one, it was done just over a year ago, and it was done after I had been on a month-long trip to China. It's called Tranquility, and I saw many sort of water areas with hills and that look so peaceful and gentle. And the butterfly actually is hand-painted silk paper that I made, and there's beads in that one as well.
So this is a tribute to the trip.
That's right, it is a tribute to the trip. Another fun one, beneath the summer sun, again, the fabric, the dyeing of the fabric sort of dictated that it was sort of a fun piece, and I see blowing bubbles out in the sun.
You have several in this format with the bubbles.
Yes. Yeah, the circles and bubbles and that are sort of where I'm at the moment. I love curved lines, as you will see in many of them. There's lots of curved lines. And this one is just called Joy. It was, again, it reminded me of children blowing bubbles on a summer day. And there's lots of beads in that one, as well as, and it was painted mostly.
And how do you decide on the background, like this one, red?
Well, I try different ones and decide which I like, which I feel looks the best with them. Some definitely the starkness of the black. I tried black on this one and it didn't work at all, so I tried yellow and I tried sort of that turquoisey blue, and the red was the one that sort of stuck out as what I wanted it to say, I guess. It's a feeling that I get. This is quite an old piece, and it's called A Spring River of Joy. And I did this several years ago. And it comes from, one of my favorite poets is Rumi, and it's one of his poems that says, there's a river of joy running through us. And so it was just a take on that particular poem. Another water one. Water seems to be have some influence here. It's called Undertow. Again, it's a lot of metal threads and beads, and it was just reminded me of you see pictures of those beautiful waves, and to me it's very powerful, but at the same time I find it soothing too, that gentle roll of the waves.
You think of surfing?
Yes, exactly. I've never done it. It's another experiment with the dye. It's called Summer Explosion, and there's sort of lots of flowers came out in that dye, and I have no control over what I get when I dye. It's all just trial and error. And this one reminded me of a beautiful summer garden, and so I created a small garden inside the circle with a red sky.
And this is the last one.
And this is the last one. Well, there's one more actually. This is called River Breakup, and again, I did this in the Christmas, well, not in Christmas time, I guess it was probably February of this year, when we were having such cold weather and I was waiting for the snow and the ice and the cold to go and the river to break up and spring to come.
And there's one more.
One more down at the end. Called Veins of Gold, and this was the second piece that started the whole gold and circle effect. and it represents a vein, a gold mine with the veins of gold running through, and at the top is a nugget of gold. And all those threads are metal threads with some, about 5% of gold in them.
You love gold.
It's interesting to work with. It's a very different technique, and to me it's the finest, most precise work that I do. The rest of my work is sort of free and easy, but working with gold is very time-consuming and very precise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Caffery. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you for coming today.
Oh, it's an honor. How many pieces do you have in this show?
I have 22 pieces and they're all hand stitched.
And how long have you been working on this?
For the most part, I have been since January 1st.
Can we show the public some of them?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. What do we have here?
Well, this one is one where I painted fabric with a fabric paint that comes from Scotland. And then I just added some stitches to it so that, and I call it love knots. I see the rectangular shapes as letters, love letters, and I've added the knots, so it's a play on love letters.
Have you been to Scotland?
Oh yes, definitely, several times.
Beautiful place.
Yes, my family heritage is from Scotland, and I always feel like I've gone home when I go there.
Oh, wonderful. What about the one over there?
This one is a piece of fabric that I did with a technique called snow dyeing, and then I've just isolated some of the spots that reminded me of things. I have one that I think is a man riding a bronco, and they're sort of reflections of what might be from either the sky or underwater.
So how do you decide on what colors to choose, how to make the pattern?
I work from my heart. I don't draw. I have an inspiration or a thought, or I read something that I think is very pertinent to what I want to do, and I see the finished product in my mind before I start. And then I draw with my needle and thread.
And over here?
This one is called Undertow, and it's the shape of a wave, and I just imagined it being, if you were underwater, that force that drags you down. And it's done with, this one particularly has some metal threads and beads in it.
How long have you been doing this?
I have been hand embroidering since I was 6 years old. And about 20 years ago, I started doing my own designs and expressing my own creativity.
What about this one?
This one is also done with metal threads, and it's called Spring River of Joy. One of my favorite poets is Rumi, and he has a poem about water, and this one really inspired me. I've done several pieces from his inspirations.
Everybody loves Rumi.
Yes, don't they though?
Would you like to share with us other pieces?
Sure, certainly, yes.
What about that one over there?
This one over here I had a picture of a wrought iron gate from England, from a village in England. And I just did a lot of skewing of it in a program on the computer. And there's 3 layers of different manipulations. And then I isolated some areas and did them. This was done a number of years ago, long before I knew anything about Zentangles, but basically now I see it as a Zentangle.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I see a larger one here.
Yes, this one is done pretty much entirely with metal threads. They're the type of threads that are used for the royal robes and garments. They're also used in military dress uniforms. And it was, again, I sit down and just stitch.
What's it like for you to do this for your eyes? It must be very challenging.
No, I mean, I often move my eyes up and around, but I one time asked my optometrist about that, and she said, as long as you're exercising your eyes, they're keeping them strong.
Good advice.
Good advice, yes. This little one was one I was stitching during the Sochi Olympics, and that large line in there is one that has been in my mind for many years, and I've never done anything with it. And I thought, okay, the time has come. I was nearly finished when I realized that the stitches that are there represent many of the sports that were in the Olympics. So I call it Ode to Sochi Gold.
They look so royal.
Thank you.
What about this one?
Well, this one is called Creation, and it is, I see the gold and silver as part of the greater power that we all have, and then the copper, it represents Earth, and there's blue beads for the sky, green beads for the foliage. And the gold and silver is actually kid leather.
Oh. Beautiful. And this one?
This one I call Veins, and it was just, I did the outlines with gold and red and purple and green, and then I thought it reminded me of food pods, or our veins with the blood vessels. And so there's about 4,000 French knots in that piece.
Here.
This is just a fun piece that I did early on, and it's called the Tree of Life. And again, the black background represents the blackness, and then the colors that came with creation.
So a bit of a biblical
Yeah, sort of.
metaphor.
Exactly, yes.
Beautiful.
And this one is called Tranquility. I'm very drawn to the Eastern cultures, and I had a trip to China last fall, and this is a result of that trip. The butterfly is hand painted on silk paper that I made. But all of the lines just remind me so much of Eastern tranquility.
There is this zen, tranquil feeling about your work.
Thank you. Yes.
And what about on that side?
Okay, we can look at we'll go to the far side.
Sure.
This one was a piece of hand-dyed fabric. I dye all my own fabric, in one method or another. I don't use commercial fabric. And this one just reminded me of sand dunes, and so I call it Sahara Sunset. And there is a small little green spot in the lower part, right here. And then I've sort of blowing that up to be the palm leaves.
Like an oasis.
Like an oasis, yes. This is a fun piece and the green sort of fiber that you see is from the bark of the mulberry tree, and there's method of making it usable for fabric and fiber. And I call this schools out, so all my little fish are floating away.
So this series, is it a new style or it's representative?
It is. I did one piece 2 years ago that was into a show, a private show in Toronto, and then it went to another big show in Italy, and that piece is actually sold. And so that gave me the start of this, and it was beneath the surface, looking down through the holes, either into ourselves or from heaven or from the earth.
And what about this one?
Oh, this one is Summer Evening, and it was another piece of dyed fabric and that I had done, and I just saw it as a fun summer evening with fireflies and bugs and birds.
They go really well with summer.
Yes, which we are experiencing now finally.
That's true.
And this one is called stratification, and it was a technique of marbling that I did, and I've enhanced it with some other paints besides the dyes that I used. But yeah, it was just a fun piece, and I love the colors that came out on it.
Have you always dyed your fabrics?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
Did somebody teach you or you learned?
No, I've taken many classes on dyeing fabric, and I love the fact that I never know what I'm going to get until it's finished. You know, it's very subjective. You put it in your dye, and I never know what it's going to turn out to be. And this one I just call Wonderment. It started out to be one thing, and as I stitched with it, it lost that name, and so I'm still wondering what it was. And again, there's the Koso painted red and green in this one.
And this glitter is beautiful, very glamorous.
Oh, thank you.
How long is this going to be here?
It's here until the 17th of June.
And are you working on a different project right now?
I'm doing a bunch of testing now for something else. Yes. I can't not have my hands busy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.